What would you do if your own son left you stranded on a dark highway just to keep a dinner date with his wife? My name is Martha. I'm 67 years old, and I never thought my own child could break my heart the way he did. But before I tell you about that terrible night that changed everything between us, let me start from the beginning. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real stories like mine. I raised my son David all by myself. His father left when David was just 3 years old, walked out one morning and never looked back. I was 25 then, scared and alone with a little boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day I cleaned offices downtown, and at night I waited tables at a diner that stayed open until 2 in the morning. I barely slept, but I made sure David had everything he needed. Good clothes for school, hot meals every day, help with his homework even when I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. David was such a sweet little boy back then. He would wait for me by the window every night, his little face pressed against the glass, watching for my car to pull into our driveway. When I walked through that door, he would run to me with the biggest smile, throwing his arms around my waist like I was the most important person in the world. And maybe I was, back then. Maybe I was all he had, and he was grateful for the love I gave him. I never remarried. Oh, there were opportunities, good men who showed interest, but I always put David first. I told myself he needed me, that no man could love him the way his real mother could. Every decision I made was about what was best for David. When he wanted to play baseball, I worked extra hours to pay for his uniform and equipment. When he struggled with math in high school, I hired a tutor even though it meant I had to skip meals sometimes to make the budget work. When he graduated and wanted to go to college, I took out loans that I'm still paying off today, 5 years later. David is 25 now, married to a girl named Jessica who he met in college. She's pretty, I'll give her that, with long blonde hair and a smile that looks perfect in pictures. But there's something cold about her eyes, something calculating that makes me uncomfortable. From the very beginning, Jessica made it clear that she didn't think much of me or the little house where I raised her husband. She would wrinkle her nose when she visited, making comments about how small my kitchen was or how outdated my furniture looked. David never said anything to defend me. He would just laugh nervously and change the subject. They got married last year in a big ceremony that cost more than I make in 2 years. Jessica's parents paid for most of it, of course. They have money, lots of it. Her father owns some kind of business that I never quite understood, and they live in a house that looks like something you'd see in a magazine. 3 stories, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than my entire first floor. Jessica made sure I knew how different our situations were. At the wedding reception, she introduced me to her friends as David's mother who works so hard to make ends meet. The way she said it, with that fake sympathetic smile, made me feel small and ashamed of the life I had built for my son. After the wedding, I started seeing less and less of David. He used to call me every Sunday, a tradition we had kept since he left for college. But the calls became shorter and less frequent. Jessica was always in the background. I could hear her voice, impatient and demanding. David, we need to go. David, you promised we'd leave by noon. David, your mother can wait. And he would always choose her. Always cut our conversation short to please his wife. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself this was normal, that when children get married, they naturally become more focused on their new family. That's what I wanted for David, wasn't it? To be happy, to build a life with someone he loved? But deep down, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. The little boy who used to wait by the window for me seemed to have forgotten all about the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. 6 months ago, I started having trouble with my right knee. At first, it was just a little stiffness in the morning, something I thought would go away on its own. But it got worse. The pain became constant, sharp and burning, making it hard for me to do my cleaning job. I had to take breaks every few minutes, sitting down to rest, trying not to let my supervisors see how much I was struggling. At night, the pain kept me awake, throbbing and aching no matter how I positioned my leg. I put off going to the doctor for as long as I could. Money was tight, as always, and doctor visits were expensive even with my basic insurance. But finally, the pain became too much to ignore. I made an appointment with Dr. Richardson, the same doctor who had delivered David 25 years earlier. He was getting old himself now, gray-haired and kind, with gentle hands that reminded me of my own father. After x-rays and tests that I couldn't really afford, Dr. Richardson sat me down in his office and explained what was wrong. The cartilage in my knee was almost completely worn away, he said, probably from all those years of working on my feet, carrying heavy cleaning supplies, rushing from one job to another to support my son. I needed surgery to replace the joint, a procedure that would require me to stay overnight in the hospital in the next town over, about an hour's drive from where I live. You'll need someone to drive you there and back, Dr. Richardson explained, his voice gentle but firm. After the surgery, you won't be able to drive yourself for several weeks. And you'll need help at home for the first few days, someone to make sure you're taking your medications properly and help you get around safely. My heart sank as I listened to his words. I didn't have many people I could ask for help. My sister lived in another state, too far away to be of any use. My few friends from work were struggling with their own problems, their own health issues and family responsibilities. There was really only one person I could turn to, one person who should have been there for me without me even having to ask. That night, I called David. It took him 3 rings to answer, and when he did, I could hear the television in the background, some show he was watching with Jessica. I explained about the surgery, about needing someone to drive me and help me afterward. I tried to keep my voice steady, not wanting to sound like I was begging my own son for help. "Oh, Mom," he said, and for a moment his voice sounded like the little boy I remembered. "Of course I'll help you. When is the surgery?" When I told him the date, there was a pause. I could hear him talking to Jessica in the background, their voices muted but urgent. Then he came back on the line. "That's fine," he said, though something in his tone had changed. "I can take you in the morning and pick you up afterward. It's just day surgery, right? I mean, you'll be done by afternoon." I explained that I would need to stay overnight, that the surgery was more complicated than a simple day procedure. Another pause, more muffled conversation with Jessica. I could hear her voice getting sharper, more insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. "Okay," David finally said. "I'll figure something out. Don't worry about it, Mom. I'll take care of everything." For the first time in months, I felt a warm feeling spread through my chest. My son was going to be there for me when I needed him most. Maybe I had been wrong to worry, wrong to think that Jessica had completely taken him away from me. Maybe when it really mattered, when his mother needed help, David would remember all the years I had put him first, all the sacrifices I had made for his happiness. I scheduled the surgery for the following Thursday. David called me the Sunday before to confirm the details, what time he would pick me up, what I should bring to the hospital. He sounded distracted during the call, like his mind was somewhere else, but I chose to focus on the fact that he was helping me. That had to count for something. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. The pain in my knee was worse than usual, but that wasn't what kept me awake. I was nervous about the procedure itself, about being put under anesthesia, about waking up in pain in a strange place. But more than that, I was thinking about David, about how grateful I was that he would be there with me. It felt like maybe this crisis would bring us closer together, the way difficult times sometimes do with families. Maybe Jessica would understand how important it was for a son to take care of his mother, especially when that mother had given up everything for him. I got up early that Thursday morning, even though David wasn't picking me up until 9. I made myself a light breakfast, knowing I wouldn't be able to eat again until after the surgery. I packed a small bag with a nightgown, my medications, and a book I probably wouldn't have the energy to read. I sat in my kitchen, watching the clock and waiting for my son to arrive, the same way I used to wait for him to come home from school when he was little. At exactly 9 o'clock, I heard David's car in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw him sitting behind the wheel, talking on his phone. He didn't get out to help me with my bag or to make sure I was okay. He just sat there, gesturing as he talked, completely absorbed in his conversation. I limped out to the car with my bag, my knee screaming with every step, and got into the passenger seat. "Hi, Mom," he said, barely looking at me as he ended his call. "Ready to go?" I nodded, buckling my seatbelt and trying not to show how much the simple act of getting into the car had hurt. David backed out of the driveway and headed toward the highway, his fingers drumming impatiently on the steering wheel. The radio was playing some pop song I didn't recognize, loud enough that conversation was difficult. "How are you feeling?" I asked, raising my voice over the music. "Fine," he said, not taking his eyes off the road. "Traffic's not too bad this morning. We should make good time." That wasn't what I had meant, but I didn't push it. I settled back in my seat and watched the familiar landscape pass by outside my window. The trees were starting to change color, autumn painting the leaves in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful, and for a moment I felt peaceful, grateful to have this time alone with my son, even if he seemed distant. About halfway to the hospital, David's phone rang. He answered it without looking at the caller ID, putting it on speaker so he could keep both hands on the wheel. "Hey baby," Jessica's voice filled the car, sweet and musical, but with an edge underneath that I had learned to recognize. "Are you almost done with this hospital thing?" I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. This hospital thing. As if my surgery was some minor inconvenience that was disrupting their day. "We're on our way there now," David said, glancing at me quickly before looking back at the road. "I should be back home by this afternoon." "Good," Jessica said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "Because my parents want to take us to dinner tonight at that new restaurant downtown. The one with the 2-month waiting list? Daddy finally got us a reservation." My heart started to pound. David hadn't mentioned anything about dinner plans. He had promised to pick me up after my surgery, to make sure I got home safely and had everything I needed for the first night of my recovery. "Tonight," David said, and I could hear the conflict in his voice. "I thought I was going to stay with Mom tonight, make sure she's okay after the surgery." Jessica's laugh was cold and dismissive. "David, she's having knee surgery, not brain surgery. She'll be fine. And this dinner is really important to Daddy. He wants to discuss some business opportunities with you, maybe bring you into the company. You can't pass up a chance like this." I sat frozen in my seat, listening to my daughter-in-law talk about me like I wasn't even there, watching my son's face as he struggled with his decision. This was the moment when I would find out what really mattered to him. His mother, who had given up everything for him, or his wife's family and their money and their fancy dinner reservations. "We'll figure something out," David said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Let me get Mom settled at the hospital and then I'll call you." "Just don't take too long," Jessica said, her voice turning playful but with a warning underneath. "You know how Daddy gets when people keep him waiting." She hung up without saying goodbye to me, without even acknowledging that I was in the car, that I was the reason for this inconvenient trip to the hospital. David turned off the speaker and put his phone back in the cup holder, his jaw tight with tension. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. "It's fine, Mom," he said, but his voice was sharp with irritation. "Jessica's family just has some business stuff they want to talk about tonight. Nothing you need to worry about." But I was worried. I was very worried. Because I knew my son, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. I could see him weighing his options, trying to figure out how to be in 2 places at once, how to take care of his mother and please his wife at the same time. And I was afraid I already knew which side the scale would tip toward. We pulled into the hospital parking lot 15 minutes later. David found a space near the entrance and turned off the engine. For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of the morning's conversation hanging between us. "Mom," he said finally, turning to look at me for the first time since we had left my house. "About tonight." "It's okay," I said quickly, not wanting to hear him say the words that would break my heart. "I understand that Jessica's family is important to you." "They are," he said, relief flooding his voice. And this business opportunity could really change things for us. For our future, you know. I nodded, forcing a smile that I hoped looked more genuine than it felt. Of course, honey. I want what's best for you. He smiled back, the first real smile he had given me all morning. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. You always do. As we walked into the hospital together, David carrying my small bag and offering me his arm for support, I tried to hold on to that moment of connection between us. Maybe I was worrying for nothing. Maybe he would find a way to be there for me and still make his dinner plans. Maybe being a good son and a good husband didn't have to be mutually exclusive. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I had a terrible feeling that I was about to find out just how much my son had changed, and just how little his mother's needs mattered compared to his new life with Jessica and her wealthy family. The little boy who used to wait by the window for me was gone, and I wasn't sure I recognized the man who had taken his place. The hospital check-in process took longer than expected. There were forms to fill out, insurance cards to copy, medical history questions that seemed to go on forever. David stood beside me at the reception desk, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, checking his phone every few minutes. I could see his impatience growing with each delay, each additional paper the nurse handed me to sign. How much longer is this going to take? He asked the receptionist, his voice tight with frustration. We've been here for almost an hour. The young woman behind the desk looked up at him with tired eyes. She had probably dealt with impatient family members all morning. Sir, we're moving as quickly as we can. Your mother's surgery is scheduled for 11:30, so we need to get all her paperwork completed before then. David glanced at his watch and sighed heavily. I wanted to tell him that he could leave if he needed to, that I would be fine on my own, but the truth was I was scared. The thought of going through this surgery without anyone there who cared about me made my chest feel tight with anxiety. Even if David was distracted and impatient, he was still my son. He was still the only family I had. Finally, we finished with the paperwork, and a nurse led us to a small room where I was supposed to change into a hospital gown. David waited outside in the hallway while I struggled with the ties and snaps, my hands shaking slightly from nerves. When I opened the door, he was on his phone again, speaking in low, urgent tones. I know, Jessica, but I can't just leave her here alone, he was saying. She's my mother. I understand that, but... He saw me listening and quickly ended the call. Ready, Mom? I nodded, though I felt anything but ready. The hospital gown was thin and scratchy, and I felt exposed and vulnerable walking down the hall in my slippers. David walked beside me, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. I could practically see him calculating time in his head, figuring out how long the surgery would take, how long recovery would be, whether he could still make it to Jessica's family dinner. The pre-surgery area was busy and noisy, filled with patients on gurneys and medical staff hurrying back and forth. A cheerful nurse named Patricia helped me onto a bed and began the process of preparing me for surgery. She inserted an IV into my arm, asked me to confirm my name and birth date multiple times, and explained what would happen when they took me into the operating room. The surgery usually takes about 2 hours, she told David, who was standing at the foot of my bed looking uncomfortable. Dr. Martinez is excellent, one of the best orthopedic surgeons in the state. Your mom will be in recovery for a few hours after that, and then we'll move her to a regular room for the night. What time do you think she'll be ready to go home tomorrow? David asked, and I noticed he didn't ask about my pain level or what the recovery process would be like. Just when he could check this responsibility off his list. Probably sometime after lunch, Patricia said. We'll want to make sure she's steady on her feet before we discharge her. And she'll need help at home for the first few days, especially with stairs and getting in and out of bed. David nodded absently, already pulling his phone out of his pocket as it buzzed with another message. I watched him read it, saw his jaw tighten with stress. Jessica was clearly not happy about having to wait for him. David, I said softly, reaching for his hand. If you need to go, I'll understand. I can take a taxi home tomorrow. He looked up from his phone, and for a moment I saw something that might have been guilt flash across his face. No, Mom, I'm not going to abandon you. I promised I'd be here, and I will be. But even as he said the words, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it automatically, and I could see Jessica's name on the screen. The guilt in his expression was quickly replaced by irritation, though I wasn't sure if he was irritated with Jessica for pressuring him or with me for needing his help in the first place. Dr. Martinez appeared at my bedside, a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands. He explained the procedure one more time, answered my nervous questions, and assured me that everything would be fine. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I looked back at David. He was already on his phone again, turned away from me, deep in conversation with his wife. The last thing I remembered was the anesthesiologist telling me to count backward from 100. I made it to 97 before everything went dark. I woke up what felt like minutes later, but the clock on the wall said it was almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My throat was dry and my knee felt strange, numb but somehow heavy at the same time. A different nurse, an older woman with gentle hands, was checking my vital signs. "How are you feeling, honey?" she asked, adjusting my pillows so I could sit up more comfortably. "Thirsty," I croaked, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube they had used during surgery. She gave me ice chips and explained that the surgery had gone very well, that Dr. Martinez was pleased with how everything had turned out. My new knee joint would need time to heal, she said, but in a few months I would be walking better than I had in years. "Where's my son?" I asked, looking around the recovery room. There were other patients in beds nearby, some with family members sitting beside them, holding their hands and talking quietly. My bedside chair was empty. "He stepped out to make some phone calls," the nurse said. "He's been here the whole time, very worried about you. He should be back soon." But David didn't come back soon. I lay in that recovery room for 2 more hours, drifting in and out of sleep, waiting for him to appear. Other patients were visited by their families, children and spouses who brought flowers and worried expressions and gentle kisses on foreheads. I watched them and tried not to feel sorry for myself. When David finally showed up, it was almost 6 o'clock. He looked harried and stressed, his hair messy like he had been running his hands through it. His clothes were wrinkled and there were sweat stains under his arms despite the cool autumn weather. "Hi, Mom," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," I said, though my knee was starting to throb as the anesthesia wore off. "Where were you?" "I had to make some calls," he said vaguely. "Work stuff, you know. And Jessica needed me to handle some things for tonight." Tonight. The dinner with Jessica's parents. I had forgotten about it while I was unconscious, but now it came flooding back. David was still planning to go to that dinner. He was still choosing Jessica's family over his own mother, even now, even when I was lying in a hospital bed. "I thought you might stay here tonight," I said carefully, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "The nurse said I might need help if I have trouble sleeping or if the pain gets bad." David shifted uncomfortably, his hands fidgeting with his car keys. "Actually, Mom, about that. Jessica's parents made these dinner reservations months ago. It's at this really exclusive restaurant, and her father wants to talk to me about a job opportunity. A really good job opportunity." "I see," I said, though I didn't really see it all. How could a dinner be more important than making sure his mother was okay after surgery? "But I'll be here first thing in the morning to pick you up," he said quickly. "And I'll make sure you have everything you need at home. Maybe I can stop by the grocery store, pick up some easy meals for you." I wanted to ask him what would happen if I had complications during the night, if I fell trying to get to the bathroom, if the pain became unbearable. But looking at his face, at the way he was already mentally preparing to leave, I knew it wouldn't matter what I said. He had made his choice. "Okay," I said quietly. "I understand." Relief flooded his expression. "Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. You always do." He leaned down and gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, the kind of perfunctory gesture you might give to a distant relative at a family gathering. "Get some rest, okay? I'll see you in the morning." And then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor as he hurried away to his important dinner, his important life, his important wife who was more important than the woman who had raised him. I lay in that hospital bed as evening fell, watching the shadows lengthen across the room. Other patients had visitors coming and going, bringing dinner from home, staying to watch television together, holding hands during the scary moments when pain medication wasn't enough. I had no one. The night nurse, a young man named Kevin, was kind and attentive. He helped me to the bathroom when I needed it, brought me extra blankets when I got cold, and checked on me every hour to make sure my pain was manageable. But he wasn't family. He was paid to take care of me, not there because he loved me and wanted to make sure I was okay. Around 10 o'clock, I tried calling David. I told myself I just wanted to make sure he had gotten to the restaurant safely, but really I hoped he might change his mind and come back to stay with me. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. He had probably turned it off for dinner, not wanting Jessica's father to think he was rude or distracted. I left a short message, trying to keep my voice light and cheerful. "Hi honey, just wanted you to know I'm doing fine. The surgery went well and the nurses are taking good care of me. Have a good time at dinner. Love you." He never called back. The pain medication made me drowsy, but I couldn't really sleep. Every time I started to drift off, some sound would wake me up, a machine beeping, someone walking past my room, my own discomfort as I tried to find a position that didn't hurt. I kept thinking about David, wondering if he was enjoying his fancy dinner, if he was impressing Jessica's father, if he was thinking about me at all. Around midnight, I heard laughter from the hallway, families saying goodbye after long visits, promising to return the next day. I thought about all the times I had stayed up late taking care of David when he was sick, holding his hand when he had nightmares, making sure he never felt alone or scared. Where was that boy now? What had happened to the son who used to need me so desperately? I must have finally fallen asleep sometime after 2 in the morning, because the next thing I knew, Kevin was gently shaking my shoulder and telling me it was time for my morning medications. Sunlight was streaming through the window, bright and cheerful, mocking my dark mood. "Your son called early this morning," Kevin said as he helped me sit up. "He said he'd be here around 11 to pick you up." My heart lifted slightly. At least David hadn't forgotten about me completely. At least he was coming to take me home. But 11 o'clock came and went with no sign of David. Then 11:30. Then noon. I was dressed and ready to go, my small bag packed, my discharge papers signed. Dr. Martinez had stopped by to check on my knee and pronounced himself satisfied with my progress. All I needed was my ride home. At 12:30, David finally called. I could hear traffic noise in the background, and his voice sounded strained and tired. "Mom, I'm so sorry I'm late," he said. "Last night ran really long, and I overslept this morning. But I'm on my way now, okay? I should be there in about 45 minutes. "How was dinner?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know. "It was great," he said, and for the first time in the conversation, he sounded genuinely enthusiastic. "Jessica's dad offered me a position in his company. Really good money, great benefits. It could change everything for us." Us. He meant him and Jessica, of course. Not him and his mother, not the family he had been born into, but the family he had chosen, the family that could offer him money and opportunities and a life I could never provide. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, because what else could I say? "Congratulations." "Thanks, Mom. I'll tell you all about it on the drive home. See you soon." But when David finally arrived at the hospital, he wasn't alone. Jessica was with him, sitting in the passenger seat of his car, looking beautiful and perfectly put together despite what must have been a late night. She was wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I made in a month, her makeup flawless, her blonde hair styled in loose waves that framed her face perfectly. David helped me to the car, his movements quick and efficient, like he was handling a package that needed to be delivered. Jessica didn't get out to help, didn't even roll down her window to ask how I was feeling. She just sat there, checking her phone and occasionally glancing at her watch with obvious impatience. I got into the back seat, feeling like an intruder in my own son's car. Jessica had claimed the front seat, of course, the position that should have been mine on the day I was coming home from surgery. But I didn't say anything. I just buckled my seatbelt and tried to get comfortable despite the throbbing in my knee. "How are you feeling, Mom?" David asked as we pulled out of the hospital parking lot. But he was looking at Jessica, not at me, and I could tell the question was more out of politeness than genuine concern. "I'm okay," I said. "A little sore, but the doctor said that's normal." Jessica turned around in her seat to look at me for the first time. "Well, you look good," she said with that fake smile I had come to know so well. "Much better than I expected. I told David you'd be fine, that you didn't really need anyone to stay with you overnight. You're tougher than you look." There was something cruel in her tone, something that suggested she knew exactly how much her words would hurt. She was telling me that she had convinced my son to abandon me, that she had been the voice in his ear persuading him that his mother didn't really need him. If you're watching this and you've had to deal with family members who don't appreciate you, please hit that like button. Sometimes sharing these stories helps us feel less alone in our pain. The drive home should have taken about an hour, but we were only halfway there when David's phone rang again. He answered it on speaker, and Jessica's father's voice filled the car, loud and commanding. "David, we need to talk about the contract details," the man said without any greeting or pleasantries. "Can you come by the office this afternoon? I'd like to get this paperwork started as soon as possible." I saw David's eyes light up with excitement and ambition. This was his big chance, his opportunity to join Jessica's wealthy family and leave his old life behind. "Including me." "Absolutely, sir," David said. "What time works for you?" "How about 2 o'clock? And bring Jessica with you. Her mother wants to take her shopping for some new clothes for the company party next month." I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was already 1:15. Even if we went straight to my house without any stops, David would barely have time to drop me off and get to Jessica's father's office. There would be no time to help me get settled, to make sure I had food in the house, to see if I needed anything from the pharmacy. "We'll be there," Jessica said before David could answer. "David is so excited about this opportunity. We both are." "Good," her father said. "This could be very lucrative for both of you, if you're willing to commit fully to the company. We expect dedication and loyalty from our employees, especially family members." The message was clear. David's loyalty needed to be to Jessica's family now. They were offering him money and success, but only if he proved that he was willing to put them first in all things, including above his own mother. When we finally reached my house, David parked in the driveway but didn't turn off the engine. Jessica stayed in the car, not even pretending to care about seeing me safely inside. David got out and helped me with my bag, but I could see him glancing at his watch, calculating how long it would take to get across town to the office. "Mom, I'm really sorry, but I need to get going," he said as we reached my front door. "This meeting is really important." "I understand," I said, fumbling in my purse for my house keys. My hands were shaking, whether from pain medication or emotion, I wasn't sure. "Do you need me to help you inside?" he asked, but he was already backing toward the car. "No, I'll be fine," I lied. The truth was, I wasn't sure how I was going to manage the stairs to my bedroom, or how I was going to cook dinner with my knee throbbing like this. But I could see that David needed to leave, needed to get to his real life, the life that mattered to him now. "Okay, great," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I'll call you tonight to check on you." But as I watched him drive away, Jessica's hand already on his arm, both of them talking excitedly about his new job and their bright future together, I had a sinking feeling that he wouldn't call. And I was right. The phone stayed silent all evening, all night, and into the next day. My son had gotten what he needed from me. He had a ride to the hospital and a ride home, and now I was no longer his responsibility. Jessica's family had made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and keeping that offer meant proving his loyalty to them, not to the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise him. I sat in my empty house that night, my knee aching and my heart breaking, and realized that something had changed forever between my son and me. The little boy who used to wait by the window was truly gone, and in his place was a man who saw his mother as an obligation to be managed, not a person to be loved and protected. But I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. 3 days passed before I heard from David again. 3 long days of struggling to take care of myself with a healing knee, of trying to navigate my stairs with crutches, of eating crackers and canned soup because I couldn't stand long enough to cook a real meal. I had expected him to call that first night like he promised, maybe even stop by to see how I was managing. But my phone stayed silent. On the 4th day, he finally called. His voice was bright and excited, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't abandoned his mother in a hospital room to have dinner with his wife's family. "Mom, hi. Sorry I haven't called. Things have been crazy with the new job. Jessica's dad has been showing me around the company, introducing me to people. It's incredible, the opportunities here." I wanted to tell him that I had fallen trying to get out of the shower the night before, that I had sat on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes before I could get up again. I wanted to tell him that I had run out of the pain medication the doctor had prescribed and didn't have a way to get to the pharmacy. I wanted to tell him that I had never felt so alone in my entire life. Instead, I said, "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you." "Thanks, Mom. Listen, I have some great news. Jessica's dad offered me a position as regional sales manager. It's a 6-figure salary. Can you believe that? More money than I ever dreamed of making." "That's amazing, David," I said, and I meant it. I wanted my son to be successful, to have opportunities one had never been able to give him. But I also felt a cold knot forming in my stomach, because I knew that success like this came with strings attached. "There's just one thing," David continued, and his voice changed slightly, became more careful. "The position requires a lot of travel. I'll be on the road about 3 weeks out of every month, visiting clients, building relationships. Jessica's going to travel with me sometimes. Make it like a working vacation." The knot in my stomach tightened. "That sounds exciting for both of you." "It is," he said. "But it also means I'm going to be pretty busy for the next few months, maybe even the next year or 2. I might not be able to visit as much as I'd like." Visit as much as I'd like. As if he had been visiting regularly before. As if he hadn't already cut me out of his life in every way that mattered. "I understand," I said, because what else could I say? That I needed him? That I was scared of being alone? That I wanted my son to care about me half as much as he cared about impressing his wife's father? "I knew you'd understand, Mom. You always do." 2 weeks later, David called again with more news. He and Jessica had found a house, a beautiful place in the same neighborhood where her parents lived. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a 3-car garage. They were moving in next month. "It's about 2 hours from where you are," he said casually, like the distance was no big deal. "But with the new job keeping me so busy, we really need to be closer to the office." 2 hours. He was moving 2 hours away from me, to a house I would probably never be invited to visit, in a neighborhood where I would never belong. He was building a life that had no room for his mother in it. "The house sounds lovely," I managed to say. "I'm sure you and Jessica will be very happy there." "We will be," he said, and his voice was full of the kind of contentment I hadn't heard from him in years. Not when he talked about his marriage, not when he talked about his wife, but when he talked about money and success and the life that Jessica's family was offering him. Over the following months, our conversations became shorter and less frequent. David was always traveling, always busy, always rushing off to some important meeting or client dinner. When he did call, he talked about his job, his house, his new life. He rarely asked about my knee, which was healing slowly but well. He never asked if I needed anything, if I was lonely, if I missed him. I tried to fill the emptiness with other things. I joined a book club at the local library, made friends with some of the other women my age. I started volunteering at a food bank, helping families who were struggling the way I had struggled when David was young. It felt good to be useful, to feel like my life still had purpose even if my son no longer needed me. But late at night, when the house was quiet and dark, I would lie in bed and remember the little boy who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms, who used to tell me I was the best mom in the whole world, who used to say he would take care of me when I got old. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as an obligation he was relieved to escape from. 6 months after David's surgery, I got another call from Dr. Richardson. During a routine follow-up appointment, he had found something concerning in my blood work. He wanted me to see a specialist, a doctor in the same city where I had had my knee surgery. The appointment was in 3 days, and he stressed that I shouldn't delay. Is it serious? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to speculate until we have more information, he said gently. But Martha, I need you to promise me you won't put this off. Early detection is important with these things. These things. He didn't say the word, but I knew what he meant. Cancer. The word hung in the air between us, unspoken but terrifying. I sat in my kitchen after the call, staring at the appointment card Dr. Richardson had given me, trying to process what was happening. I might be seriously ill. I might need treatment, support, someone to take care of me the way I had taken care of David all those years. And I had no one. Well, that wasn't entirely true. I had David, my son, who owed me nothing according to the world but everything according to my heart. Surely when he learned that his mother might be facing something serious, something potentially life-threatening, he would put aside his busy schedule and be there for me. Surely this would be the wake-up call that reminded him what really mattered in life. I called him that evening, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. It rang 4 times before he answered, and I could hear voices and laughter in the background. "Hi Mom," he said, sounding distracted. "Can I call you back later? We're at a client dinner and—" "David, I need to talk to you," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "It's important." The background noise faded as he moved to a quieter location. "What's wrong?" I explained about Dr. Richardson, about the blood work, about the specialist appointment in 3 days. I tried to keep my voice calm and matter-of-fact, but I could hear it shaking despite my best efforts. "Oh Mom," David said, and for a moment he sounded like my little boy again. "I'm sure it's nothing serious. Doctors just like to be cautious, you know? They probably want to rule things out." "Maybe," I said. "But David, I'm scared. And I don't have anyone else to." "Of course I'll help," he said quickly. "What do you need? Could you drive me to the appointment? It's in the same city where I had my surgery. I know it's a long drive, and I know you're busy, but—" There was a pause, and I could hear muffled voices in the background. Jessica, probably, asking what was wrong, why he was taking so long. "When did you say the appointment was?" he asked. "Thursday afternoon. 2 o'clock. Another pause. Longer this time. "Thursday. Let me check my calendar." I could hear him tapping on his phone, and my heart sank. The fact that he needed to check his calendar to see if he could take his potentially ill mother to a doctor's appointment told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in his priorities. "I have a client meeting that morning," he said finally. "But I think I can reschedule it." "Yeah, I can probably make this work." "Probably." "Not, of course, Mom, I'll be there." "Not, nothing is more important than this." Just probably, like he was doing me a favor by considering rearranging his schedule. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I really appreciate it." "No problem, Mom. I'll pick you up around noon, okay? That should give us plenty of time to get there." Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I had barely slept the night before, my mind racing with possibilities, fears, what-if scenarios that ranged from benign to terrifying. I dressed carefully in my best outfit, a navy blue dress that David had bought me for Christmas 2 years ago, back when he still bought me Christmas presents. At 11:30, my phone rang. It was David, and I could hear the sound of traffic in the background. "Mom, I'm running a little late," he said, sounding harried. "My meeting went longer than expected, and now I'm stuck in traffic. I'm probably going to be about 30 minutes behind schedule." My stomach dropped. But David, the appointment is at 2. If we leave at 12:30 instead of noon. It'll be fine, Mom. I'll drive fast. We'll make it. But I knew we wouldn't make it, not comfortably. The drive took an hour on a good day, and with David running late and afternoon traffic, we would be cutting it very close. I had specifically chosen the earliest appointment available because I knew how anxious I would be, how much I would need time to check in and fill out paperwork and prepare myself mentally for whatever the doctor was going to tell me. David arrived at 12:45, looking stressed and distracted. He barely apologized for being late before hurrying me out to his car, where Jessica was once again sitting in the front seat. She was dressed for shopping, I realized, in a cute outfit with expensive-looking boots and a designer purse. "Hi, Martha," she said with that fake smile of hers. "I hope you don't mind that I came along. David and I have plans in the city after your appointment." Plans. Of course they had plans. Even today, when his mother was facing potentially devastating news, David had made plans with his wife. I was just a stop along the way to their real day, their important day. "That's fine," I said, settling into the back seat again. At least this time I understood my place. David drove fast, weaving in and out of traffic with an urgency that had nothing to do with concern for me, and everything to do with not wanting to be late for whatever he and Jessica had planned afterward. I gripped the door handle and tried not to think about what the doctor might tell me, tried not to imagine facing bad news alone while my son and daughter-in-law went shopping or out to lunch or whatever it was they were so eager to do. We made it to the medical building with 5 minutes to spare. David dropped me off at the entrance while he went to park the car, and I hurried inside to find the right office. The waiting room was full of people who looked as nervous and scared as I felt, clutching insurance cards and forms, some accompanied by worried-looking family members. I checked in with the receptionist and was handed a clipboard full of paperwork. Medical history, insurance information, emergency contacts. For emergency contact, I wrote David's name and phone number, though I wondered if he would even answer if the hospital called. David and Jessica appeared just as I was finishing the forms. They took seats across the waiting room from me, Jessica immediately pulling out her phone to scroll through social media while David checked his work emails. They looked like they were waiting for a bus, not sitting with a woman who might be about to receive life-changing news. When the nurse called my name, I stood up on unsteady legs. David looked up from his phone. "Do you want me to come back with you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he hoped the answer would be no. "That's okay," I said. "I can handle it." And I did handle it, alone, just like I had learned to handle everything else. Dr. Peterson was a kind woman about my age, with graying hair and gentle hands. She explained the test results in terms I could understand, talked about treatment options, answered my questions with patience and compassion. The news wasn't as bad as I had feared, but it wasn't good either. I would need treatment, regular monitoring, lifestyle changes. I would need support. When I came back to the waiting room 45 minutes later, David and Jessica were gone. I looked around, confused, wondering if I had somehow missed them. Then I saw David through the window, standing outside on the sidewalk, talking animatedly on his phone. Jessica was beside him, checking her watch impatiently. I walked outside, my mind still reeling from everything Dr. Peterson had told me. David ended his call when he saw me approaching. "How did it go, Mom?" he asked, but he was already walking toward the parking garage. I tried to explain what the doctor had said as we walked, but it was clear that David wasn't really listening. He was nodding and making appropriate sounds, but his attention was elsewhere, probably on whatever plans he and Jessica had for the rest of the day. We were about 30 minutes into the drive home when David's phone rang again. He answered it on speaker, and Jessica's father's voice filled the car, loud and demanding as always. "David, where are you? We were supposed to meet at 3 o'clock to finalize the Patterson contract." I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 3:20. In his concern about being late to my appointment, David had apparently forgotten about this meeting entirely. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Williams," David said, his voice tight with panic. "I'm driving back from the city with my mother. We should be back by 4:30. This is very disappointing, David, Jessica's father said coldly. I told you when I hired you that reliability and punctuality were non-negotiable. This contract is worth $2 million to our company. I saw David's knuckles whiten as he gripped the steering wheel. This was his worst nightmare, disappointing Jessica's father, the man who had given him everything he thought he wanted in life. I understand, sir. It won't happen again. I can be there by 5 if. I'm leaving at 4:30 for another appointment, Mr. Williams interrupted. We'll have to reschedule for tomorrow. But David, I need you to understand that this kind of thing cannot continue. Family obligations are important, but business comes first. Always. The message was crystal clear. David's mother, his family obligations, were interfering with his real priorities. Jessica's father was not happy about it, and if David wanted to keep his job, his salary, his house, his place in Jessica's wealthy family, he needed to make better choices about where he spent his time and energy. After Mr. Williams hung up, the car was filled with tense silence. I could see David's jaw working as he processed what had just happened, the implications for his career, his future. Jessica reached over and put her hand on his arm. It's okay, baby, she said softly. Daddy will understand. He knows how demanding your mother can be. Demanding. That's what she called it when I needed my son to take me to a doctor's appointment that might determine whether I lived or died. Demanding. This can't happen again, David said, his voice tight with stress. I can't afford to mess up this job, not with the house payments and everything else. I know, Jessica said soothingly. Maybe your mom needs to find other arrangements for things like this. She can't expect you to drop everything every time she has a doctor's appointment. They were talking about me like I wasn't there, sitting right behind them, listening to every word. Making plans for my life without consulting me, deciding what I did and didn't deserve for my own son. We were about 10 minutes from my house when David's phone rang again. This time it was one of his clients, someone with an urgent problem that needed immediate attention. David pulled over to the side of the road to take the call, his voice switching to the smooth, professional tone he used for business. Of course, Mr. Johnson. I can be there in an hour. Yes, I understand how important this is. Absolutely, we'll make this work. He hung up and turned to look at me, his face apologetic but determined. Mom, I'm really sorry, but I have to go handle this client emergency. It's a huge account, one we can't afford to lose. But we're almost to my house, I said, confusion and hurt evident in my voice. I know, but this can't wait. And honestly, after what happened with Mr. Williams today, I can't afford to let another client down. I felt something cold settle in my chest as I realized what he was saying. David, you can't just leave me here on the side of the road. It's not that far to your house, he said, avoiding my eyes. Maybe a mile and a half at most. The weather's nice, and the walk might be good for you. A mile and a half. He wanted his mother, who had just had knee surgery 6 months ago, who had just received concerning medical news, to walk a mile and a half home along a busy road because his client was more important than making sure I got home safely. David, I can't walk that far, I said, my voice starting to shake. My knee isn't fully healed yet, and I'm wearing dress shoes, and... Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be, he said, his voice edged with irritation. I'm already in trouble with Jessica's dad because of today. I can't mess up with this client too. Jessica turned around in her seat to look at me, her expression a mixture of impatience and fake sympathy. Martha, it's really not that far. And it's good exercise. You'll be home in no time. If you've ever been abandoned by someone you trusted, someone you loved more than your own life, please share this video. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in our pain. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, this person I had sacrificed everything for, and I saw a stranger. The little boy who used to promise he would always take care of me was gone, completely and permanently gone. In his place was someone who cared more about money and status and impressing his wife's family than he did about his own mother's safety and dignity. "Please, David," I whispered, hating myself for begging but unable to stop. "Please don't leave me here." For just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or the ghost of the love he used to feel for me. But then Jessica put her hand on his arm again, and his expression hardened. "You'll be fine, Mom," he said, not looking at me. "I'll call you later to make sure you got home okay." And then he was pulling my purse from the back seat, handing it to me through the window, starting the car engine again. I stood on the side of the road in my good dress and uncomfortable shoes, watching my son drive away from me, literally abandoning me on the highway because his business meeting was more important than my well-being. I stood there for a long moment after his car disappeared around a curve, trying to process what had just happened. Cars whizzed past me at 50 miles per hour, some honking their horns, probably wondering why an elderly woman was standing alone on the shoulder of a busy road. The sun was starting to set, and the temperature was dropping. Soon it would be dark, and I would still be out here, alone. I started walking, my dress shoes pinching my feet with every step, my knee aching from the uneven pavement. Cars continued to speed past me, their headlights starting to come on as dusk settled over the landscape. I felt exposed and vulnerable, invisible to the drivers who were rushing home to their families, their dinners, their comfortable lives. As I walked, I found myself remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. David at age 5, crying because he had fallen off his bicycle, running to me for comfort and band-aids. David at 10, proudly showing me a drawing he had made at school, a picture of our little family with the words, "I love my mom," written in crayon across the bottom. David at 15, awkward and embarrassed but still willing to dance with me in our living room when his prom date had cancelled at the last minute. Where was that boy now? What had happened to the child who had loved me so completely, so unconditionally? When had I become a burden to him instead of a blessing? When had his love for me been replaced by this cold calculation of what I could do for him versus what he owed me? I was crying as I walked, tears streaming down my face as I stumbled along the rough shoulder of the road. My feet were starting to blister in my dress shoes, and my knee was throbbing with each step. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of being abandoned by my own child. About halfway home, a truck pulled over in front of me. For a moment, I was frightened, thinking of all the stories I had heard about women being attacked by strangers. But when the driver got out, I saw that he was an older man, probably in his 60s, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a lifetime of honest work. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle with concern. "Do you need help?" I tried to speak, tried to explain, but all that came out were more tears. This stranger, this man who owed me nothing, was showing me more kindness and concern than my own son had. "My name's Frank," he said. "Let me give you a ride wherever you're going. It's not safe for you to be walking out here alone, especially with it getting dark." Frank helped me into his truck, asking no questions about why I was stranded on the side of the road, offering no judgment about my situation. He turned up the heat when he saw me shivering, offered me tissues from a box he kept on his dashboard. When I finally managed to give him my address, he just nodded and drove me home, this complete stranger treating me with more care and respect than my own flesh and blood. When we reached my house, Frank insisted on walking me to my door, making sure I got inside safely. He even offered to wait while I called someone to make sure I was okay, though I had to tell him there was no one to call. "Ma'am," he said as he was leaving, "I don't know what happened to you today, and it's not my business. But I want you to know that whatever it was, you didn't deserve it. Nobody deserves to be left alone and helpless like that." After he drove away, I sat in my empty house and thought about the contrast between Frank, a stranger who had shown me genuine human decency, and David, my son who had abandoned me on the roadside for the sake of a business meeting. A man I had never met before had treated me with more love and respect than the child I had raised and sacrificed everything for. That night, I waited for David to call like he had promised. I waited until midnight, then until 1 in the morning, then until dawn. He never called. He never checked to see if I had made it home safely, never asked if I was okay, never showed the slightest concern for the mother he had left stranded on a dark highway. I realized, sitting in my living room as the sun came up on what felt like the worst day of my life, that I had been clinging to an illusion. The son I thought I had, the boy I had raised to be kind and caring and loyal, didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had existed. Maybe I had been so desperate for his love that I had imagined qualities in him that were never really there. But this was just the beginning. I had no idea how much more my heart could be broken, how much deeper David's betrayal could go. The worst was yet to come. 2 weeks passed after David left me on that highway, and I didn't hear a single word from him. Not a phone call, not a text message, not even a quick voicemail to see if I had made it home safely that night. It was as if I had simply stopped existing in his world, as if the woman who had raised him, loved him, sacrificed everything for him had just vanished without a trace. During those 2 weeks, I did a lot of thinking. I sat in my quiet house, looking through old photo albums, remembering the years when David was small and I was everything to him. I found myself wondering if I had made mistakes in raising him, if I had been too protective, too giving, too willing to put his needs before my own. Had I created this monster who could abandon his own mother on the side of a road? Or had David simply shown me his true character, the person he had always been underneath the sweet little boy I thought I knew? The anger came and went in waves. Sometimes I would feel such rage at his selfishness, his cruelty, his complete disregard for everything I had done for him. Other times, I felt only sadness, a deep grief for the relationship I thought we had, for the son I thought I had raised. But mostly, I felt empty, like something essential had been carved out of my chest and thrown away. On a rainy Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after being abandoned on that highway, I was sitting in my kitchen having coffee when the phone rang. For just a moment, my heart jumped, thinking it might be David finally calling to apologize, to explain, to show some sign that he still cared about me. But when I looked at the caller ID, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Thompson. This is Sarah Chen from Patterson Industries. I'm calling about the contract meeting that was rescheduled because of your doctor's appointment." I was confused. "I think you have the wrong number. I don't know anything about Patterson Industries." "Oh," the woman said, sounding surprised. "Isn't this David Thompson's mother? He works for Williams & Associates now, but he mentioned that he had to reschedule an important meeting because he was taking his demanding mother to yet another doctor's appointment." The words hit me like a physical blow. Demanding mother. Yet another doctor's appointment. David had been talking about me to his business contacts, complaining about me, making me sound like a burden who was constantly interfering with his work. Yes, this is his mother," I managed to say. "Oh good," Sarah continued, apparently not noticing the shock in my voice. "I just wanted to reschedule our meeting." David seemed so frustrated about having to miss it, especially since he said his mother has a habit of scheduling these medical emergencies whenever he has important business to attend to. He mentioned that you've been doing this for months, always finding reasons why you need him to drive you places. Medical emergencies. Finding reasons. As if my knee surgery and my follow-up appointments were elaborate schemes to inconvenience my son. As if I was some manipulative old woman who enjoyed disrupting his precious career. "I see," I said quietly. "Well, I'm sure David can call you himself to reschedule." "Of course," Sarah said cheerfully. "He's such a dedicated employee, always putting the company first. It's refreshing to see someone so committed to their career, even when family members try to interfere." After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone, trying to process what I had just heard. David wasn't just neglecting me. He was actively complaining about me to his colleagues, painting me as some kind of needy, manipulative woman who was deliberately sabotaging his career. He was rewriting our history, turning my legitimate medical needs into fictional emergencies designed to make his life difficult. The phone rang again an hour later. This time it was a woman named Linda who worked at a restaurant downtown. "Is this David Thompson's mother?" she asked. "Yes," I said, my stomach already sinking. "I'm calling from Marcello's restaurant." Your son made a reservation for 6 people last Saturday night, but he called that afternoon to cancel because he said his mother was having another one of her health crises and he had to take care of her. We had to turn away other customers because of that reservation, so we have a cancellation fee. But when we called him about it, he said his mother should pay the fee since she was the one who caused the problem. I felt like the world was tilting under my feet. Last Saturday night was the evening after David had abandoned me on the highway. I had been home alone, exhausted and heartbroken from my long walk, while he was apparently supposed to be at some dinner that he had cancelled and blamed on me. He was using me as an excuse for his own choices, making me the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. "Ma'am," Linda was saying. "Are you there? The cancellation fee is $200, and your son insisted that since you were the cause of the problem, you should be responsible for paying it." I'll have to call you back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Over the next few days, I received 3 more calls. A client of David's who wanted to reschedule a meeting because David had told him his mother was going through one of her difficult phases and demanding constant attention. A woman from Jessica's book club who had heard that David's mother was one of those clingy older women who can't accept that her son has his own life now. And most devastating of all, a call from Dr. Richardson's office, asking if I was okay because David had called to tell them that his mother was becoming increasingly dramatic about minor health issues and might need psychological evaluation. Each call felt like another knife in my heart. My son wasn't just abandoning me, he was systematically destroying my reputation, turning me into a laughingstock, making me the subject of gossip and pity among people I had never even met. He was protecting his image by making me the scapegoat for every inconvenience in his life. But the worst call came on Thursday afternoon. A woman with a sweet voice asked if she was speaking to Martha Thompson. "Yes," I said warily, bracing myself for another humiliating revelation about what David had been saying about me. "Mrs. Thompson, my name is Helen Williams. I'm Jessica's mother." Jessica's mother. The woman whose husband had given David his dream job, whose family had welcomed him into their wealthy circle, whose daughter had stolen my son away from me. "I hope you don't mind me calling," Helen continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. "But I felt like I needed to reach out to you about David." "What about David?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Well, Jessica has been so worried about him lately. He's been under tremendous stress trying to balance his career with his family obligations. Specifically, his obligations to you." Family obligations. The same phrase Jessica's father had used, making it clear that caring for his mother was an unwelcome burden that was interfering with David's real life. "I'm sorry he's stressed," I said carefully. "The thing is," Helen went on, "Jessica feels like David is being pulled in too many directions. He's trying so hard to be a good son, but honestly, Mrs. Thompson, he's 25 years old. He has a wife now, a career, a future to build. And Jessica feels like you're having trouble accepting that." "I see. She mentioned that you've been having a lot of medical issues lately, always needing David to drive you places, to take time off work to help you. And last week, when he missed that important client meeting because of your doctor's appointment, well, it almost cost him his job." I wanted to scream at her that I had asked David for help exactly twice in the past year, that I had never demanded anything from him, that he had volunteered to help me and then abandoned me on the side of a road. But I also knew it wouldn't matter what I said. These people had already decided who I was in their story. The needy, demanding mother-in-law who was holding their golden boy back from success. "Jessica and I have been talking," Helen continued, "and we think it might be best if David took a step back from some of his family responsibilities for a while. Just until he gets settled in his new position and he and Jessica can focus on building their life together." Family responsibilities. That's what I had become to my son, a responsibility to be managed, minimized, and eventually eliminated. "We're not trying to be cruel," Helen said, though her words felt like cruelty itself. "We just think that David needs some space to grow into the man he's meant to become. And honestly, Mrs. Thompson, holding on to him so tightly isn't fair to him or to Jessica." holding on to him so tightly, as if wanting my son to care about me, to show up when he promised to not abandon me on the side of a road was somehow possessive and unreasonable. I understand, I said, because what else was there to say? I'm so glad, Helen said, relief evident in her voice. Jessica will be so pleased. She really does want what's best for David, and what's best for him right now is to focus on his future with her and their family. Their family. Not our family, not the family that had included me for 25 years, but their new family where I was not welcome, not wanted, not needed. After Helen hung up, I sat in the silence of my empty house and finally understood the full scope of what had happened. David hadn't just grown distant from me. He had actively chosen to erase me from his life. With Jessica's encouragement and her family's support, he had decided that his mother was an obstacle to overcome, a problem to solve, a burden to shed. And he had done it not with honesty or courage, but with lies and manipulation. He had turned me into the villain of his story, the unreasonable woman who was holding him back from happiness. He had complained about me to his colleagues, used me as an excuse for his own failings, and allowed his wife's family to paint me as some kind of desperate, clinging creature who couldn't accept that her son had grown up. The truth was exactly the opposite. I had spent his entire childhood teaching him independence, encouraging him to follow his dreams, supporting his choices even when they took him away from me. I had never asked him for anything except basic human decency, the kind of care and respect that any parent might reasonably expect from their child. But apparently, even that was too much to ask. If this story is touching your heart, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'm sharing these painful experiences because I know many of you have faced similar heartbreak, and sometimes it helps to know we're not alone. That evening, I made a decision. I was tired of being the victim in David's narrative, tired of being portrayed as the problem in his perfect new life. If he wanted to cut me out of his world, he could do it honestly, without hiding behind lies and excuses and other people's phone calls. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang 4 times before he answered, and when he did, he sounded annoyed. "Hi, Mom," he said with a sigh. "I'm kind of busy right now. Can this wait?" "No, David, it can't wait," I said, my voice steady and calm. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About the lies you've been telling about me. About the phone calls I've been getting from your colleagues and clients and Jessica's mother. About the stories you've been making up to explain why you can't be bothered to treat your own mother with basic human decency." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When David finally spoke, his voice was defensive and angry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," I said. "You've been telling people that I'm demanding and manipulative, that I create medical emergencies to get your attention, that I can't accept that you have your own life. You've been using me as an excuse for your own failures and shortcomings." "Mom, that's not." "You abandoned me on the side of a highway, David," I said, my voice growing stronger. "You left your mother stranded on a busy road in the dark because your business meeting was more important than my safety. And then you told people it was because I was being dramatic and demanding." "It wasn't like that," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Then what was it like? Explain to me how leaving your mother on the roadside was anything other than cruel and selfish." Another long silence. Then David's voice, cold and hard in a way I had never heard before. "You want to know the truth, Mom? Fine. The truth is that you're exhausting. You're needy and clingy, and you can't accept that I have a life that doesn't revolve around you. Every time I try to move forward, to build something with Jessica, you find some way to pull me back." The words hit me like physical blows, but I forced myself to stay calm. "When have I ever pulled you back, David? When have I ever asked you for anything except basic care and respect? You're always having some crisis," he said, his voice getting louder. "Always needing something, always wanting me to drop everything and come running. And when I can't, you make me feel guilty about it." "I have asked you for help exactly twice in the past year," I said. "Once for my surgery, which you volunteered for, and once for a doctor's appointment. Both times you acted like I was imposing on you." Because you were imposing on me, he exploded. I have a career now, Mom. I have responsibilities that matter. I can't keep putting my life on hold every time you decide you need attention. Every time I decide I need attention. As if my knee surgery and my medical concerns were elaborate performances designed to inconvenience him. David, I said quietly, I gave you everything. I worked 2 jobs to support you. I went without food so you could have new clothes for school. I took out loans I'm still paying off so you could go to college. I never asked you to put your life on hold. I just asked you to care about mine. And I'm supposed to be grateful for that forever, he said, his voice cruel and cold. I'm supposed to sacrifice my future because you made choices when I was a kid? I'm not asking you to sacrifice your future. I'm asking you to remember that I'm your mother. You're not my mother anymore, David said, and the words felt like a death sentence. Jessica is my family now. Her parents are my family. You're just the woman who raised me. And I don't owe you anything for that. The line went quiet except for the sound of both of us breathing. 25 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion dismissed with those few cruel words. I was just the woman who raised him. Nothing more, nothing less. You're right, I said finally, my voice calm despite the devastation in my heart. You don't owe me anything. And I don't owe you anything either. What's that supposed to mean? It means that if I'm just the woman who raised you, then you're just a man who happened to live in my house for 18 years. If we don't have the bond of family, then we don't have any bond at all. Mom. My name is Martha, I said. If I'm not your mother, then you can call me Martha. I could hear Jessica's voice in the background, asking what was wrong, telling David to hang up on me. And for once in his life, David didn't do what Jessica told him to do. I didn't mean it like that, he said, his voice smaller now. Yes, you did, I said. And you know what, David? Maybe you're right. Maybe I was holding you back. Maybe I was too needy, too demanding, too present in your life. So let me fix that for you. What are you talking about? I'm talking about giving you exactly what you want. Complete freedom from the burden of having a mother. No more phone calls asking for help. No more medical appointments that might interfere with your important meetings. No more guilt about not visiting, not calling, not caring. Mom, please. Martha, I corrected him. And I'm not finished. You want to know what I've decided? I've decided that I deserve better than a son who sees me as an obligation. I deserve better than someone who abandons me on roadsides and lies about me to strangers. I deserve better than you. The words hung in the air between us, final and irreversible. I raised a son who I thought would love me and protect me and care about my well-being, I continued. But that son doesn't exist. He never existed. You've shown me who you really are, David, and I believe you. You're someone who values money more than loyalty, status more than love, convenience more than character. And I don't want that person in my life. You can't just cut me out, David said, panic creeping into his voice for the first time. I'm your son. No, I said simply. You just told me you're not. You're just a man who used to live in my house, remember? And I don't have room in my life for people who treat me the way you've treated me. I could hear Jessica in the background again, her voice sharper now, telling David to hang up, to stop wasting time on me. But David ignored her. What if something happens to you? He asked. What if you get sick, or? Then I'll handle it the same way I handled everything else while you were building your new life, I said. I'll take care of myself. I've been doing it for most of my adult life anyway. Mom, please. Can't we just? There is no we, David, I said, and I felt something shift inside me as I said it, something that felt like strength. You made that choice when you drove away and left me standing on that highway. You made it when you lied about me to protect your image. You made it when you told me I'm just the woman who raised you. I was angry. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said. And you know what? I'm not even angry about it anymore. I'm grateful. You've shown me that I've been wasting my time and energy on someone who doesn't deserve either. You've freed me from the illusion that I had a son who loved me. I do love you, David said desperately. No, you don't, I said with certainty. You love what I can do for you. You love the idea of having a mother when it's convenient. But you don't love me, the actual person. If you did, you never could have treated me the way you have. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of 25 years of relationship coming to an end. This is what you wanted, David, I said finally. Complete freedom from family obligations. Consider it my final gift to you, Mom. Goodbye, David, I said, and hung up the phone. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that call, waiting to feel regret or sadness or the desperate urge to call him back and apologize. But those feelings never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time since David had gotten married, I wasn't waiting for his call, wasn't hoping he would visit, wasn't making excuses for his behavior or trying to understand his choices. I wasn't the disappointed mother anymore, constantly hurt by a son who couldn't be bothered to care about her. I was just Martha, a woman who had given her best years to raising an ungrateful child and was now free to figure out what the rest of her life could look like. David called back 3 times that evening, but I didn't answer. Jessica's mother called the next day, her voice sharp with anger, telling me that I was being unreasonable and cruel to David. I listened politely and then told her that David was her family's problem now, not mine. The house felt different after that. Quieter, but not empty. Peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. I stopped checking my phone constantly, stopped jumping every time it rang hoping it would be David. I stopped making excuses for why he didn't visit, stopped pretending that his neglect was normal or acceptable. 3 months later, I got a call from Frank, the kind truck driver who had helped me that terrible night on the highway. He had kept my phone number, he said, because he had been worried about me. We started talking regularly, and I learned that he was a widower like me, lonely like me, but kind and decent in ways that my own son had never been. Frank and I became friends first, then something more. He treated me like I mattered, like my thoughts and feelings were important, like I deserved respect and care. He reminded me that there were still good people in the world, people who understood that love meant showing up, not just saying pretty words. 6 months after my last conversation with David, Frank and I got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. None of David's friends or Jessica's family were there, of course. But my friends from the book club came, and some of the volunteers from the food bank, and people who cared about me because of who I was, not because of what I could do for them. I never heard from David again after that final phone call. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about me, if he ever regrets the choice he made to value money and status over love and loyalty. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. I learned something important during those dark months when I thought I had lost everything. I learned that I hadn't lost a son. I had lost an illusion. The son I thought I had, the boy who loved me and would always be there for me, had never really existed. I had created that person in my mind, projected those qualities onto a child who was always destined to grow up selfish and cruel. The real David, the man who could abandon his mother on a dark highway, had always been there underneath the sweet little boy I remembered. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But losing that illusion, painful as it was, gave me something precious in return. The freedom to build a real life with people who actually cared about me. I wasn't waiting anymore, wasn't hoping anymore, wasn't breaking my heart over someone who had never deserved my love in the first place. If you're watching this and you recognize your own story in mine, let me tell you something important. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved by people who show up for you, who care about your well-being, who treat you like you matter. Don't waste your life waiting for someone to become the person you need them to be. Find the people who already are those people, and build your happiness with them instead. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to walk away from people who don't value us, even when those people are our own children. It's not easy, and it's not what anyone dreams of when they hold their baby for the first time. But sometimes it's the only way to reclaim our dignity and find real peace. My son taught me that blood doesn't make family. Love makes family. Respect makes family. Showing up when it matters makes family. And by that definition, Frank is more family to me than David ever was. I am 72 years old now, and I have never been happier. I have a husband who adores me, friends who value me, and a life that belongs to me instead of being held hostage by someone else's selfishness. I wake up every morning grateful for the people in my life who choose to be there, who treat me like I matter, who understand that love is a verb, not just a word. David made his choice when he drove away and left me on that highway. And I made mine when I finally stopped chasing after someone who was never coming back. We both got exactly what we wanted. He got his freedom from family obligations, and I got my freedom from heartbreak. If this story has moved you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember to subscribe for more real stories about real people facing real challenges. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is remind each other that we're not alone in our struggles, and that there's always hope for a better tomorrow, even when today feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and care. Don't let anyone, not even your own children, convince you otherwise.